So, good day to all of you that decided to join to this session on development of concept note. It seems that all interested for the session more or less here, and in the respect of those that actually joined timely, I will start the session. In case you missed the session on the info session that was held before, between 9:30 until 11:15. My name is Andrea. I am capacity building expert at EU Tacso Free Project, who is organizer of this session. Together with me now in this process will be also my colleague Alexandra, our country coordinator from Montenegro, and Christina in the role of the event manager. The idea of the session is to share with you, of course, experience on the development of the concept note, share some good practices, also some tips how to actually avoid making mistakes or improve the concept notes. So in the next half an hour, I will actually go through the number of slides which relates to the format of the document, which is called concept note format, which is annex of the guidelines for the applicants. And let's say every, like, I don't know, 15 minutes, depending, I will make like a break for certain questions that Alexandra will actually facilitate on, let's say, your behalf. You are all welcome to ask, let's focus to ask your questions in the chat section. So let's focus on the one section, and that is chat. She will summarize your questions or will ask me then the most repetitive questions. Anyhow, later on, I will prepare the answers on all your questions, and and then we will publish them on our website together with the presentation and I think as well the recording of this webinar. Of course, since this webinar is somehow continuation of the first session, I will reflect at some points to the call that is now actually open, and that we are in the process of the preparation for that one. However, number of information concerning the formats and so on, the questions, how to respond, what should avoid, is of course applicable to other call for proposals as well when we are talking about the concept note. So for the beginning, I would like to actually hear a little bit of your experience in developing a concept note. What is your experience? If you can write in the chat section any point that you would like to share concerning that that experience, or what you think would you point out as the first thing concerning the concept note. So, is there anything you would like to share? Or you enjoy simply me talking the whole time? Okay, yeah, definitely what we should count, and I'm counting that in our sessions. There are people that are really already highly experienced in preparing the concept notes, as some of you saying, like you already developed like many of them, like the Risto is saying, like I already prepared like around 10 of them until now, while some of them might be just the beginners. That's also possible. That's why I'm trying to balance in sharing the information with you, the somehow information that will cover this basic knowledge, let's say, but also will provide something that is of the interest for those that have already experience. Exactly. As one participant is saying, yes, it's not always easy, and it's great really challenge to develop a concept note when you have a large partnerships, and even for such a large and complex projects. And the challenge of the concept note is how to actually present in such a limited number of pages that concept note form is requiring, so many information that is requested, and to ensure that all actually partners they are satisfied. Okay. Okay, so those that actually provided some now answers in the chat, since I will now continue with the presentation, are saying that have actually a pretty strong experience in developing of the concept note. However, you're interested to, of course, hear about some hints and to learn more, and especially in relation to the background section, which actually I suppose it's referred to the relevance of the relevance part of that document. So what actually I like to share always with participants when we are talking about the concept note, and I like to call it like a concept note story, is that for the beginning, we should actually talk and ask ourselves what is the actual change we want to see as the result of our work, and why? Since the concept note is actually the part of the process in which we are presenting our idea. So more, let's say, in relation to the significance is what we are presenting as our idea than the actual technique of writing, if may I say, like this. And you might notice it's always a challenge, and that's exactly the point of the concept note, how to present such a large and complex project in a few sentences, in terms, of course, of the concept note in a few pages. And once we can present that in such a briefly form, then we can actually prepare a good concept note and have strong presentation of our of our idea. I have pointed out several questions for which I found they are key that we have answers. So in addition, what I just sent previously, definitely it is what is the problem that we want to solve, or situation that we want to improve. So it doesn't have to be a problem. It can be a situation that we want to improve or increase or make something better. And this always relates with the description of the situation, and part of the, of course, relevant section from the concept note. Then In relation to this, it's always a question, what are the needs of those we want to actually support? Meaning of those that we want to target with our actions. That is usually, I can actually share with you also my experience as in relation with the assessment of the proposals, very often a weak component in the concept notes. Presentation of those whom we actually want to support, why we want to support them, and how actually this will look like. Of course, in relation to this is also how can we act in terms of making the situation better, and also improving the situation or position or capacities of those that we will target with our action. In this sense, we should combine nicely, gently, who we are and whom we are actually acting. And it is always the challenge when we have partnerships, how actually others in relation to the lead applicant are presented in the proposal. That's one also of the area that usually we are losing the scores in the application, and especially at the concept note level, not mentioning who are the partners or stakeholders, those that can actually support the implementation of the action. Some other like webinars and on-the-spot workshops dedicate lots of time to stakeholder analysis. We, of course, don't have a space to present our whole stakeholder analysis and in detail ourselves and our partners, especially at the level of the concept note. However, we should definitely concern of mentioning them to actually provide good quality information that we think about the partners and stakeholders and others who are relevant for this action. And the key point is what I said also at the beginning. What will be different at the end? As you noticed, the focus is of the donors is changing a lot on the long-term change, on the impact. We are talking more now on what will be the actual change, effects of our projects, and so on. From the point of the technical requirements, we have template that we must follow, and it's always, of course, should be written in English. We have limits in number of the pages and now online in characters. I'm trying to actually combine everything that is written as instruction in the guidelines for applicants and in the formats of the annexes that are close to guidelines for applicants. And at the stage of the concept note, lead applicant should also consider as obligatory signing the declaration by the applicant. Here, while presenting the concept note elements, I'm actually opening let's say the format, and we'll actually go into detail of each section. First section that we have, it's called the summary of the action. Then we have the description of the action and relevance, which are the actually heart of that our concept note proposal, and then certain information that we should provide on the lead applicant and some project details concerning the size, duration, etc. What is important to know about the summary of the action? It's actually one table that has no limits concerning the size, but the point is to provide summary. So we will not abuse that that we are out of the scope of the limit size. Usually it was like one idea of the project, and it was limited to like a one-page document in which we are actually presenting the objectives in brief, target group, final beneficiaries, and providing a list of outputs and main activities. So since we requested to be concise, we should be clear what actually we want to present there. And therefore, from the practical point of view, usually it would be good to find this after we finalize the whole concept note, after we are clear about all other sections of the concept notes. For example, we might define some objectives which we will maybe revise at the level of further exploring of the ideas for the concept note and so on. Anyhow, take care that you adjust this summary with your concept as such. This summary, as I'm calling it, like idea of the concept note, it's usually the information that is as it is here. It's like first information that someone will read about your project. It will be definitely helpful to you in other later stages for the project promotion, etc., etc. But this is something that is your like a business card, or ID, something that first you will show. This is what we can actually share with you about project as such. And then we are entering into this comprehensive part with a set of questions that are requiring from us information on the description of the action. We are limited here to 2 pages. However, as you who are already experienced a lot, you might notice that number of information is repeating in the relevance and in the description of the action as well. And now we have to somehow balance what shall we present where, and how to ensure that we have enough space to present everything that we want to present. So these elements that you see on this slide are actually the key questions concerning the description of the action. And as you can see, you ask about the background and objectives and key stakeholders and activities and how the actually how the intervention logic actually look like, with a focus on the results, and of course to mention the time frame, but also to mainstream certain points that are presenting cross-cutting issues. Here you should consider the elements always of the call, and especially what is written in the guidelines for applicants, like in our case where you are pointed to certain documents and to present, for example, gender issues and gap-free elements, and connect them with your proposal as such. So what shall we do? We need to write a little bit on the background. Even we have the whole section on relevance for this. In some cases, some colleagues are first actually developing the relevance as such. So based on what is presented on the relevance, they are actually ensuring summary of the information on the background. However, background is pointing clearly some information toward the action in terms what helped to us to prepare, let's say, a ground for the action. Like some studies that are conducted or analyzed, or some challenges that are observed or the reported, and so on and so on. When talking about the objectives, the point is not that you just copy paste what is actually written in the summary, but that you provide a story about them, which is, as these circles here, actually connected, of course, with the background and with the other aspects like stakeholders and results, etc. I have a tendency to talk a lot at one slide and present lots of things that is already written in the of course, another one is, and now actually I would have to now follow my advice to you to avoid repeating what was already said somewhere, or in your case, what is already written somewhere. The point is that try to, let's say, soften the whole story. For example, as I presented in terms of the objectives, also provides sort of like a justification, explanation, or in case of the list of activities, do not just list them, you know, provide some information of why certain activities are important, again, in relation, of course, to the objectives. You always can group activities to save the space, etc. And when we are talking about the cross-cutting issues, again, you can actually reflect on them at different parts of already what is actually mentioned. So you can even, to save the space, maybe to add some sentences when you're presenting objectives or background or activities, how do actually you are contributing to cross-cutting issues or specific requirements from the guidelines for from the guidelines for applicants. So prior actually I go to the evaluation of that part. Maybe Alex, we can see what is in the chat section and respond on either some comments or.
Well, we have a couple of comments and also one question related to summary of the action. You also mentioned that it was limited to 1 page previously, and do you recommend the same format now?
Well, the point is that you don't have that limitation now. I suppose that the contracting authority wanted to be clear that 5 pages relates to 3 pages for relevance and 2 pages for the description of the action. My recommendation, but that's not the rule, it's like now I'm just sharing as a practitioner my experience, is to still actually limit that to 1 page. So there is no point to actually create so long summaries, because then they are not actually saying summaries anymore, you know. So that is the point. If I would actually do the concept note, I would always stick to that 1 page as it was once defined as a rule. So I will just add, Alexandra, one more thing. I mentioned that at the beginning of the previous session and will repeat several times. The rules are, how to say, like they are constantly changing little by little. In, let's say, even like past several years, we don't have such a significant changes, you know, in the rules and procedures concerning the application process. But somehow there are certain elements like changing the word, like one word or something is added, or like restrictions and so on. They are changing, you know. from time to time or from call to call, depending on the time frame when the calls are published. And that's why it's really important. And honestly, I'm doing this always. I always start from the scratch, from the beginning, reading the guidelines, reviewing again in detail the forms. I even, print those annexes because it's easier for me to read once again, to compare with my previous, the presentations or some applications, what actually has changed. Anyhow, I tend to, of course, apply some previous logic. So if it was the limit to 1 page, why now to go to make a summary into 3 pages? Because there is no limit. So I tend to actually stick with it. Yeah. Okay, anything else?
Yes, we have from Emikran. Andrea mentioned many elements for description of the action. Should there be sorting, like I should write about objectives and after other components, or how?
Yeah, it actually depends. It's a very good question. Often one, because it's always what is confusing us is the number of the sub-questions, let's say, under this title in the guidelines. And then it's always sort of the question how we should actually respond to them. Shall we respond question by question, or how we will actually do it? So of course you will find what works the best for you. You can exactly as it is presented in the chat session, you can somehow group them, or you can have a subtitles like a background, objectives, and so on. But you can also use those words, and like in this presentation, you can, bold them, mark them, whatsoever. Anyhow, do not actually take your space or limit your space by copy pasting each question, because then you don't have, you're limiting your space for writing. So you can make some small, like the subtitles, or simply in the sentences as you're writing, you can actually bold them, etc., etc. So it really depends. There is no in the format requirement how this should be written, except that information should be presented. And that is why it's important to also consult then what is written in the evaluation grids, which are presented in the guidelines for applicants, and to check how how actually what we provided, information that we provided, how it's actually reflected in terms of the questions from the evaluation grid. Even the section description of the action is 1.2 in the concept note. In the grid, it's number 2. It's like design of the action. So don't be confused with that. And here it's interesting actually to see, and I again bolded for you for easier review, what is actually requested, how this will be evaluated, and of course, where you can, where the scores are doubling, like in this first one. So question about how the action, design of the action is coherent is score 5 times 2. So you can, out of 30 points or scores, reach at the end, 10 only for that section. Then further on, it is a question how the analysis of the problems involved is reflected in the design, whether you consider certain external factors like risks and assumptions. So it's immediately pointed and reminding you how you presented your intervention logic, no matter what actually the log frame is part of the full application form. So you have to, reflect here as well. And then concerning the activities, you can see that the key under this criteria are words whether the presented activities are feasible, consistent, and whether they are actually realistic. And this is also something that we should consider, since often, especially for the when preparing the proposal, it's a proposal, we tend to promise actually a lot. And then there are situations that assessment says, well, the question is how in this time frame or with this budget or with these capacities, this will be actually implemented. One important thing concerning the evaluation of the concept note is this last question on the cross-cutting elements. Now you will see when we are talking about relevance that you are asked as well about added value. These are very actually similar terms, very similar areas, and you should consider to provide information on the cross-cutting elements in the design of the action, but you will also reflect probably on them under the relevance when you're talking about the added value, or you will add some specific information on it. But just do not consider that, well, this requirement about for example, gender issues or cross-cutting issues, I already provided that in the description. Mention that under the relevance section as well, because that's a question from the relevance section on added value also. We will come to that point now also in the presentation. So consider what you already prepared in your proposal and presented, and what, in addition to the questions from the format, evaluation criteria and questions from the evaluation grid are requesting as well. You know who already participated. The concept note process is, you are actually here really fighting for each score, because one score can make a huge difference whether you are going into the second round or you are not going into the second round. And the scores are limited in terms of the size of maximum 50. So if it's a great competition, you might miss like half of the score to not go into the second round because of the number of the applications and etc. Okay. So prior going to the next session, just to see in the chat, but from what I see, Alex, there are no additional comments.
No question. There is only one comment from before, from earlier, from Adriana, and she thinks that the main challenge is not in relation to concept note. She said, in our experience, it is the vague evaluation of cost efficiency of the applications, but full applications. And she said it is very subjective indicator because we as applicants are never asked to quantify the benefits in monetary value in order for the evaluator to be objective, or the evaluator objective in the evaluation of the costs benefits of the action. I don't know, maybe if you have some comment on that, how to present.
Yes, I will actually talk about it in the next session, but just to be sure, as I mentioned, in case the colleague do not participate in that one and so on. Of course, first of all, it's always how to say, especially if we always think that our proposal is that one that is a good one, and we invest lots of efforts in preparation of the proposals, and of course that we are unsatisfied and disappointed when we are not selected for the grant as such. When we are talking about the cost efficiency at the level of the budget presentation and budget evaluation, what is important to say that budget is very much, and I will repeat that in the afternoon, is connected with how the activities are presented in the proposal and connected in the budget. And cost efficiency, it relates whether we presented something also as too expensive or even not calculate actually enough. That can be also the reason. It's not always that a proposal as such is too expensive. It might be also the opposite. The way how you actually can improve presentation of your costs is the section of the budget in the working sheet number 2 of the budget form, which is giving you opportunity for justification of the costs presented in terms how you of course calculated them, why they are important, and especially if they are, let's say, you need certain quantity more than in average, or you are aware that something is more expensive than some average cost, why is that like that? This is also, and especially in the full application form, we have enough space to provide that information as well in relation to certain activities, saying that the certain, maybe for example, costs for that activities will be higher because of, I don't know, additional traveling, or for example, to remote areas, you know, or additional sessions that are needed in case of the particular marginalized groups, etc. You know, so these are all, let's say, the possibilities that are still open, and I can say from my experience, always present the some area for further improvements. And of course, I agree that we will disagree if we are unsatisfied that we could actually be better scored. So it's, of course, it's normal, it's good, it should be like that, because that challenges us for further on to work more and better.
Andrea, we have also Daniela from the engineer. I don't know if you would like to read his comments by yourself related to our evaluation grids. If we show the evaluation grids, because they are slightly different, not in the content, but because they're slightly, he wrote that they are a bit different than usual ones, but I think we showed.
Okay. Well, I actually consulted what is in the guidelines for applicants, so I'm not sure what is like different maybe in practice or something. I was just sticking to the what is presented in the guidelines, you know, in the guidelines for applicants. I was not having attention to present the actual grid that the assessors are filling in, but staying with the presentation from the call on the from the documentation. Do you understand that well?
Yeah, he wrote is the same grids. Those are the ones that we showed.
Sorry, Alexandra?
No, he wrote is the same grids, so those are the ones that you already present.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. Well, then I will continue with the presentation. Then we will come back. Anyhow, as I said previously, with the response on the questions, if anything I receive as, of course, a comment or instruction or something that at the moment I'm not sure how to respond, I will actually prepare those additional information in the list of the questions and answers that Tacso will be published as a follow-up to those webinars. Okay, so now talking about the relevance of the action, here we have a bit more space to write, meaning we are limited to 3 pages, and we have certain sections, subtopics in the guide which are requesting the certain questions. I actually prepared in my presentation, just to share with you, some comments for each of them. For the beginning, we are asked to present the relevance to the objectives of sectors, themes, specific priorities of the call. And the key word in this section is to actually describe how we are, with our proposal, contributing to the specific priorities of the call. So again, I'm saying, based on my experience, what I saw in the number of applications, very often is happening that we are not providing justification of why and how we are contributing to the priorities of the call, but we are copy pasting them and saying these are priorities of the call and we will contribute to them. So the important is to provide justification and to stress the importance and connection of our proposal with those priorities. Also, please do not assume, but rather think about how to provide the perspective of your idea, because this is just an, let's say, opening paragraph of the relevance in which you are starting to presenting why this idea is so good to be supported under this call. Concerning some technical, let's say, experiences, so it's not, it's important now, this is a webinar, so it's not how it's prescribed somewhere. I'm sharing here experience from the practice. 1 to 2 paragraphs of your space in the application and part of the relevance on the action should be dedicated to this. This is like an just introduction, because now we are coming into more detailed section in which we will be further on exploring information on the situation in the target region, country, sectors, etc. Now here we are blooming. Now here we are actually showing off our actual knowledge on the situation, on the issues, and pointing out, also making connection with documents from the call, because we are also referring to something that the contracting authority already presented in the background, and with this we are making our story more stronger, because our actions are contributing to the objectives of the call, and in that sense making a difference because of the reason why the grants are also will be awarded. So again, from the practical experience, do not just mention the documents, so you can say, well, we mentioned those, I don't know, country analysis or gap-free or guidelines, etc., etc. Make a connection. How is that related with actually the work that you want to do? Or here especially reasons why you can justify that exactly this action is important. So for these key points, I would say, and for this section, would be good to write more, like page and a half of the document, something like that, and also balance what is, of course, the most practical for you, whether you will be, you know, using the questions from the guiding part of the form, or you will, like, you know, emphasize the particular words, or you will have small titles inside of the document, etc. One, let's say the question point or subsection where lots of applicants usually use scores is on the question, sub-question about synergy with other initiatives. So even, let's say you are not having any synergy or connection with some problems, then you can, you point it out. So write that this is something new, there is no synergies, etc. It's even better than to actually leave the impression that you simply avoided to respond or actually forgot to provide an answer. Of course, in practice, we can actually, and that's the point, we are building projects on actually synergies, and we all know from the experience that once we finish with the one project, usually we build a new one based on the, of course, the results of the previous one, and that's how we are actually keeping alive this circle of the change that we want to contribute. Sorry. Then we have the subset section in the relevance, which is requiring information about target groups and final beneficiaries. And this is, I would say, in majority of the concept note proposals, usually somehow neglected part. Neglected in terms of the presenting the actual target group and final beneficiaries, their main features, their needs, problems they have, and how the action will support them. They are usually just listed, but again, we are missing this connection with the work that we want to do and reasons why we want to actually support them. Here, do not forget now when you will be presenting the target group and final beneficiaries to include also gender analysis and reflect on that actually point as well. Here is one a recommendation concerning the target group, especially. It says balance in quantity. Do not promise significant numbers you cannot reach later on. I can tell you from the experience of someone who was I was providing help desk to grant beneficiaries, monitoring the implementation of the projects that receive grants and so on. And there are situations that are happening in practice saying, well, we plan to target 100 youth, but now we cannot mobilize more than 50. That's a problem at the level of the implementation, because it is a question whether you would actually receive a grant, whether you will be so good scored if you actually written for what you are proposing the group of 50 youth. You know, and then now you have to actually balance it with it because you're not fulfilling your grant agreement requirements, and that is actually the problem. Or there were, requirements. Well, now we want to change the target group, so you cannot change the target group. This is something that is really important, and based on which the grant is actually awarded to you. So you are changing the whole. You're changing the whole concept. We always, of course, have tendency to present that large number of individuals, groups, institutions will benefit from the actions. Of course, because that's a proposal we want to impress. But we also have to think whether that is realistic at the level of the at the level of the implementation, because it's important part of the monitoring, of course, of your efficiency and effectiveness during the implementation of the grant contracts. If you are working with some specific demanding groups and you can't have many of them, then present that as information. Do not count that everything is clear as it is clear to you or to your partners. Okay, Alex, do we have, I see there some new numbers in the chat. So is there anything important to, okay.
Yeah, there is one question. Is it necessary now for the concept note that all the lead applicants and all co-applicants are registered in PADOR?
That's a question from the previous session, but yeah, for the concept note, lead applicants should be registered in PADOR at the level of the concept note. If the concept note is selected and you are invited to submit the full application, then for that stage, also the co-applicants should be and affiliated entities should be registered in the PADOR. The advice from the guidelines for applicants and from all of us that experience the application process is always do not, wait with this registration. And I think it's much better now to be aware of what you have at the level of the concept note than at the later stage, because you will be more sorry later on if you are invited into the second round and then realizing that some of your partners are missing some information and documents that should be, that are important for the PADOR and for the evaluation of your capacities. So my advice as a practitioner, insist that you all actually register in PADOR as soon as possible and ensure that this job of the part of the job, this task is done. So.
And there are also two more. One, it's about also relation with co-applicants, since the call specified that it is about strengthening CSOs. Can co-applicant be targets, and should we also describe their needs as the co-applicants and how the action will contribute to them? What is your?
No, clearly saying no. The co-applicants cannot be a target group, because lead applicant with co-applicants will become, let's say, like the one entity at the level of the implementation, and they should actually target the group that needs their involvement, either support, either advocacy, training, whatsoever. So the co-applicants cannot, let's say, benefit neither from the position of the co-applicants, cannot benefit from both positions as co-applicants as target groups. So they are either co-applicants or you find another partners if you want to target certain organizations as target groups.
Mm-hmm. And we have one more when describing the relevance and when mentioning some reports or analysis. It's really, I think, more technical. What type of preference are you recommending? Should they put information in the footnote or maybe in the brackets or some other system?
Well, it really depends on you. What I can actually say is how to say write the exact title of the document that you are referring. That's actually the best. You can always, of course, use the footnotes. You can insert links, etc. But do not again put too many of such sources of information, because then simply your idea is lost in that, a bunch of the information. this is a proposal. It's not scientific, it's not a study, it's not an analysis, and so on. So rather to point the several of the key documents instead of having, the bunch of the documents to which you are referring in your proposal and then putting footnotes and in brackets and so on. Choose one of it, what is the more appropriate for you, or when it's really needed, put info in the footnote, but just somehow limit yourself to everything that you are referring to. That's the most important.
And just one quickly,
Okay.
because I think it's related to this capacity building. It is from Natasha. She
Okay.
asked, but the third parties, probably when giving sub-grants and these third-party agreements, if we can also include strengthening their capacity, can they be then?
That's requirement. You will see that's why this was pointed out at the info session. And if you did not succeed to attend, there is, of course, the presentation that will be published and links. Maybe you can also, even now, Alex, share in the chat the link to the FSTP brochure. However, in the guidelines for applicants is clearly stated the obligatory elements of the presentation of the financial support to third parties, and they actually reflect on a certain number of the capacity building activities. For example, is obligatory training on, I think, financial reporting and visibility, but also not only the training, but also like the mentoring process, which is not the same as monitoring. So meaning you are even now already required for the financial support to third parties to design the whole capacity building intervention that will be combined of the monitoring, of the mentoring, of the training, maybe also some other activities, depends, but be careful of what is clearly stated as a requirement. For example, because that was not such a clear and detailed requirement or so many requirements in some previous, in some previous calls. Okay, so further on, we are entering in the actually last half an hour. Concerning the relevance, we have the, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, also this section on the particular added value elements. And maybe you wouldn't believe it, but I saw in many of the proposals that this is the weakest part. After the description of the target group and final beneficiaries, added value elements are like very often in some like sentence or two sentences, hardly saying, well, we are association that is doing for like good of our community, or, we are already association that is working with a certain marginalized or vulnerable groups. So actually, that's our added value. Our proposal is added value. So that's not what we are asked here. That's the point. We are asked what are the particular added value elements of our proposal. And as you can see in the questions, and you will see in the evaluation criteria, it is asked, and there are some examples like public-private partnerships, innovations, best practices, and so on. In the guidelines, we also have especially listed, I already mentioned, of course, this gender issues component, but also the cooperation with the central and local authorities, different kinds of the partnerships, bodies, etc., etc. These are the elements of the added value. And of course, you will not now have so much space to write about them, but paragraph or two will still you will have space to write maybe even like a half of the page describing those particular added value elements. So it can be, I don't know, some partnership, and then you will describe how this will look like in the practice. And of course, you will then promote it while implementing your project as such. So here are the criteria from the guidance for applicants concerning the relevance of the section. Out of a total of 15 scores, you can receive here maximum 20 scores. Then other maximum of 30, you can receive either under the design of the action. And here I also now bold it for you, since it's lots of text for the presentation, what you should consider. And you can see these are these weak elements that, because we prepare a proposal and then we do not consult the guidelines again for these evaluation criteria. Of course, we are not objective to evaluate our proposal because we would give the best scores definitely to proposal as such. We should approach to the criteria in a way that we actually remind ourselves how we presented and check once again objectives and our reflection to objectives and priorities of the call, how we reflect the specific, sections, issues, points from the guidelines for applicants, if there are such requirements. And then, as you can see, then how we responded, that's usually very good, particular needs and constraints of the target countries and sectors and so on. But we have this also point into the under this criteria that relates with the synergy with other EU-funded initiatives that usually we miss. So it's not purposely avoided, it's probably in a hurry and so on, but usually is missing, and then that is the reason that we cannot actually reach that full point of the scores. And we have, of course, separate criteria concerning the target group and final beneficiaries, and as I just mentioned, concerning the added value elements. So the added value elements is not just, random question. So let's write something here. It's a very serious question with a serious criteria and serious scores that is bringing to our proposal. Someone raised the hand. I don't know whether there are now more the questions in chat. I'm anyhow entering into the final stage of this presentation, but Alex, if there is something hurry or someone really now strictly related to what I was saying, I can respond on the questions.
Well, there are a couple of questions. I don't know if you want to answer them now. One, it's about this support to third parties. Ardiana wrote that in the FTCP report, it's mentioned that local media can benefit from this. Is it required for them to be registered as civil society organizations, or they can also be businesses?
I'm not sure that I actually understand the question. Where is that written?
So, probably in the brochure.
Yeah, then doesn't. So the brochure presents just examples from practice from different grant schemes. And that can give you idea how others approach to the FSTP, what were actually issues they faced, and some ideas how to overcome them. However, you always have to refer when you're defining the, let's say, actors in concerning this call for proposals to guidelines guidelines for applicants of this actually call. Yeah. Okay.
And there is
next
also
one.
there is also actually two about affiliated entity. Just to clarify, maybe again, there is a question from Maya. Can we consider our networks or sub-networks as affiliated entity? And also the other side from Jovana, is it necessary to have official proof of the membership or some kind of statement that would be sufficient when presenting someone as affiliated entity?
So the now, like, what is important, of course, I am now like repeating all the time and referring to the guidance for applicants. However, based on the experience from practice, do not play with this whom you will present as affiliated entity or not. It is something that you should prove, and that is clearly written in the guidelines. Do you have a structural link, capital link, and now I blocked, and there is one more, like a financial link whatsoever, with those that you are presenting as affiliated entities. That's what is important. There is an example when, and it's clearly explained in the guidance for applicants, when we are talking about the membership base, you know, and this connection concerning the membership base. However, everything that you will present in the terms who is your affiliated entity, at some point you will have to actually prove that you are fulfilling those criteria that are written in the guidelines for applicants. Also, do not, again, like with the co-applicants, do not mix or plan to mix affiliated entities with your target group, you know. So because affiliated entities, that's why it's clearly written, should satisfy the same eligibility criteria as applicants and mandatory co-applicants, and they will be sort of your, how to say, they will widening your partnership as such. So they will be the like serious actor and player in that project implementation.
Okay, I think you already tackled this question because it was asked by LGBTQ network. For them, it was the same question if they have members of the network that are affiliated entities, but some other parts of the network, some other civil society organizations, they could be target group of the project. So
yeah, I can't go into such details,
okay,
because then that's issue of the already crossing the point of the like transparency of my neutral position, and the questions refer more to the guidelines than to the actual concept note format. Anyhow, the point is, yeah, how to say, do not play or do not mix similar groups into one, and then because anyhow this will be checked and verified, and it can actually present the problem at the end for you. But anyhow, consult with the guidelines for applicants and some other information that guideline documents that guidelines are pointing out, to be sure how you will compose your, let's say, partnership, and how you will clearly define your target group. So you will be required the same also when in relation to the FSTP. So the position that I'm now in, you will be when you will be conducting the tenders for awarding the financial support to third parties. So take care that about the transparency of the whole process. Okay, let's then, Alex, I will continue a few more slides. I actually presented the key information concerning the content of the actual concept note proposal where we are presenting the idea and what we want to actually achieve. Then we have two more sections in which we are presenting information about the basic information about the lead applicant, co-applicants, and affiliated entities. There is no size limit. These are basic information and contact details. And then there is a last section in which we are providing project details in terms of the title of the action, under which lot we are actually submitting our application, what is the location of the action, duration, the requested, of course, EU contributions and percentages. These are all important information because based on that, you might be rejected as well if you did not adjust those elements with those presented in the guidelines for applicants. So please carefully consider this. It is, of course, the challenge now. You're not going to present, for example, budget in detail, but you have to calculate pretty much the actual amount you are requesting, meaning you need to somehow draft your construction of your budget to calculate the costs, because you cannot revise them a lot. It can always happen later on that something happened and you had to change something from the point of the concept note to the point of the full application. Then you will actually have to justify that at the level of the submission of your full application form, of course. But for example, you can't change the target group at the level of your application form. So that's such or your objectives or such elements of the proposal. So concerning the process of submitting applications and the evaluation process, I actually already presented that, of course, under the info session, and here are just some more information, some additional information to repeat. So now you are filling in the grant application form, and lead applicants, they should also fill in the required declaration, of course, and there you're not sending any additional annexes. Lead applicants should be registered in PADR, and the deadline for submission is 24th of May until 6 o'clock in the afternoon, according to Brussels time. In the evaluation, I also that presented. So there is, of course, the administrative check that is happening, and then the evaluation as per criteria that are presented in this evaluation grid that I shared also, shared with you. In the format of the document that you can download from the link that Alexandra sent to you in the morning, and if it's needed, I don't know, it can be sent again just to be sure if people did not participate in the first session. In that grant application form in Annex A, which Annex A1, which relates with the concept note, you have like one check table. So you can, once you are done, check once again that you did not forget something, and that actually you fulfilled everything that was required, etc. So it's like a sort of like a self-assessment tool and reminder what actually you should consider once again. So we came to the end of this session. We have like 10 more minutes. to respond on the some of the questions, and then we are having a larger break before we are starting with the last session at 3 o'clock on the full application.
Okay, so related to questions, actually we had from Martin, he asked what is the minimum number of co-applicants that they should have. I did copy it from the guidelines from applicants because it's very specific for every lot. So maybe I don't know if there is a need to point this out again by your side.
Okay, well, not to repeat because of the others, but are there any more questions?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, there is one. Sorry, there is one from Lana. Can you add a co-applicant after concept note passes?
Well, you can't. You have to form your partnerships now when you are submitting the concept note. You are required, and this is then response to Lana and to response to Martin. Then we can end it with this. It's with the session as such. So you have defined in the guidelines for applicants who can be the lead applicant, who should be the mandatory co-applicants, and who are the possible optional co-applicants. For majority of the lots, you need to compose the partnership of one lead applicant and 4 more applicants, each presenting different IPA-free beneficiary. And of course, they should be non-profit, registered, CSOs with certain experiences. These details are not to mention, so now several times again, they are presented in the guidelines for the applicants. The exception for these lead applicants and mandatory co-applicants is in relation to the lot 5 that is focusing on the small scale operations in Kosovo and Serbia, where you need to have one applicant from one partner from Kosovo, one from Serbia, and in addition to CSOs, they can also present the local authorities. So then you are not obliged to have partners from 5 countries, but actually from 2 IPA beneficiaries, from Serbia and from Kosovo. That's when we are talking about the lead applicant and mandatory co-applicants. All other options are now the subject of reading guidelines for applicants. So I think we can come to an end. I don't see all, because now it's lots of information in the chat, and then I'm apologizing if I'm missing something. Maybe Daniela, do you want to add something? Maybe just to wait a minute or two for some of maybe Daniela's comments.
Hi everyone. No, I think it's clear enough. It's been a really good webinar to explain all different sections of the application form when it comes to the concept note phase. So once again, I can invite all the potential applicants to read carefully the guidelines and to try to explain all the elements of their proposal in a clear way that could, of course, facilitate also the evaluators in understanding the idea behind the proposal and all the added values that the proposal want to contribute to. So I think these sessions could be very useful for potential applicants, and thanks again, Andrea and Alexandra, for organizing it. And I'll follow also the next one on the full application stage.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your support. Of course, any feedback is welcome, and it's always how to say, each event has its the advantages and limitations. So I try to be to the point. It might be at some point also the overwhelming, but I would say it also provides us with like our self-assessment, which areas of our work which we can actually improve in the future. So definitely there will be, of course, one more event, and in the future, certainly the number of events also provided by national resource centers and the regional level by Tacso. So we will continue of actually building our capacities and preparing good quality proposals. Thank you all. I wishing you to have a good lunch, hopefully now in this bit larger break, and see with all of you who are interested to hear more about the full application process at 3 o'clock. Okay.